Hello everyone, Wolfie here, and this is part 3 of my tutorial series in After Effects where we go over 3D animation using the Cinema 4D renderer. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, go check them out. That's a lot of footage you're missing out on and you'll probably need it. So, let's go! So, let's begin by just ditching this composition. We've got everything we need here, it just in one place, but it's time we did something else. Let's create a pyramid. So, good way to make a pyramid, kind of just set it up to begin with. So let's begin by making the base of our pyramid by creating a new rectangle, and I'm going to set this to 1080 by 1080 just for now, because this will end up being a very big pyramid if we actually stay with that scale. It'll get scaled down, you can make it bigger or smaller, however you want. We're going to enable our grid, which is in here, grid. And these grid lines are what we're going to have to match to when we draw our pyramid. So I'm going to get my fill over here and I'm going to make it a bit more of a different color just so that I know what I'm doing. And I'm going to go right to the corner of this, line it up with my grid, and I'm just going to place one there. And I'm going to go right to the center of the composition, which if you're having trouble finding, enable proportional grid as well, which is this thicker line over here in the middle. And I'm going to put one there, and I'm going to put my last piece over here, once again right on the grid as such. And that's going to be our triangle. So you might be wondering, why aren't we using the polystar tool or something else? Well, the problem with using that is you can't really get a defined width out of it, because now we know both of these are 500 right down to the core, and also this is the right triangle to completely fit that square. Polystar tool will create an equilateral triangle instead, which won't be exactly the scale we want it to be to fit within, and we won't get a defined width either, because it'll just be drawing it based on a size. So this is the only way we can do it. We could also use masks in a composition, but I prefer to do this because then we can duplicate it and manipulate each piece with different colorings and everything. And with our drawn triangle, we're going to anchor this to the bottom, and then we're going to enable 3D on both of these, and I've already got this enabled, custom view 1. This is going to make it a lot easier for us to see what's actually going on. So we're going to get our base over here, which I'm going to just quickly name base. And I'm going to rotate its X to 90 degrees. Since we know the height of both of these is 1080, we can then just go half of 1080, which is 540, minus 540, and that puts it right on the base of the object. And then we're going to, once again, just go by 540. And then over here, it'll be minus 540. And now with this, we're going to duplicate it. And then we're going to move our X position to minus 540 and plus 540. And then we can rotate our Y to 90 degrees. And you'll probably start to see what's going on here. And then we'll use our orientation on all of our sides. Now, because this isn't necessarily an equilateral pyramid, these are going to end up being 30 degrees in their respective orientations. So this would probably be, yep, minus 30. This one, once again, would be on this axis as minus 30. And since this one's on the opposing axis, this one would just be 30 over here. That is our pyramid. And I'll just use a different color there so you can kind of see it. And I'll create a camera just so we can orbit around it using a null layer. And go back into active camera. And we can see that our pyramid has come alive. We can spin around it just like that. So yeah, that's a pyramid, and you can just do literally anything you want with it as long as you're not using illegal effect or something that wouldn't be supported in 3D. If you do want those, you could probably just duplicate these triangles and put them in their own composition. And yeah, this pyramid is quite large, but it's not really a worry, because what we can do is we can put it through a null object. And then, since it obviously needs to be 3D, we need to change our anchor point. to the golden 540. And because it's like that, we'll just need to set it to -464. And yep, that is the center of our pyramid. And now we can scale it down. That's a little bit more of a manageable size. So let's do something with these pyramids. Let's create a desert. So I am going to create my solid base as it's a good sand color. I'd say something like this. I have my sand colored base, and once again I will just put this on a surface level. And I'll just scale it up to a decent size so that it just at least fills the viewport enough. And put our pyramid directly on top. And there it is. But I think this needs a little more than just that pyramid, and this probably needs a bit of a color change, so let's make it a bit more saturated, maybe a bit brighter, just so we can indicate that that's a pyramid. Then I'll set all of my shape layers as that color. And while this looks terrible for the time being, it does get a lot better when we introduce a light. So if I just increase my position, since we already have a decent point of interest, there is a light across the whole scene. And then let's add an ambient light. So I think with our ambient light, we're going to set it with a slight yellow bias, just so we can get a whole tint across the scene, so there's no true whites or anything. And I think that's a little too bright of an ambient light, because this is our sun. So let's set this as 45. I think that's fine. Let's add a null layer so that our camera can orbit, because once again we're doing some orbiting cameras. And we're going to name it camera control. And once again we get our scene control around our pyramid. Just increase the scale of this pyramid a bit, because I don't think the pyramids were that small back in the Egyptian days. Oh no. Not quite. Let's hide that fade off in the background using our pyramid. So I'll just shimmy that all the way over there. So now it's in the distance. Then we can just simply duplicate this like so. I'm going to use Prism just so I can color coordinate these piece by piece. So this one, I'm just going to move that along there, and I think this one should be a little larger, so just scale it up. I don't really mind if it's going slightly into the ground because we're not seeing the base of the pyramid, but you should mind the base of the pyramid if it's actually going to be visible, but since it's in the ground here, we are not going to use it. And once again, Prism. I will just move this across the scene like that. And none of these are actually casting shadows yet, so I should probably go and enable cast shadows on all of these. So don't worry, we don't have to open every single one of these up. We can just grab that, copy the cast shadows, and just kinda select all of those and enable casting shadows. So not doing a whole lot for the time being, but that's because also we need to enable on the spotlight. Light options, cast shadows. So if I was to just move my light to the side a bit, we can begin to see some shadows specifically over there. And since we're on the topic of light, I think I'm going to just increase my cone angle so that it covers more of the scene. Cone angle, kind of just the angle in which the light covers the scene. And I'm just going to reduce the intensity because those pyramids look a little bit overexposed. Should probably match that colour a little more. And one more for good luck over here. So because we're scene building with a desert environment, let's make a cactus. I've never made a cactus before, so I'm going to see how this looks for you. So I'm going to go with a dark green, semi-desaturated more on the yellower side. So yeah, that's not a half bad cactus colour. They don't actually live around cacti, so this won't look particularly true to life or anything, but that's not really the point of After Effects 3D. You can make some nice stuff, but it's never going to be that realistic at all. So set that as 3D, and I'm using classic 3D, whoops. I'm gonna enable Cinema 4D real quick. Make sure you've got Cinema 4D enabled for yourself, and rotate to 90 degrees. So yep, that's good. We can now open up our geometry options and extrude it. So we're already very much familiar with this tool. It extrudes, it does what it says. And I think I need to make my cactus a little bit less thick. There we go. And because cactuses are not straight up circles, let's add a bevel. So go it rounds, and we'll make it a convex bevel so that it's softer. And then I'll just make that slightly thinner since it should not be that thick. And let's then make another one of these cylinders. And I'll just rotate this on the y-axis to be 90. And then I'll just use orientation to put it around the cactus like this. And then we'll move it upwards to about here, and I'll just reduce my extrusion depth so that it can match up with the cactus and not be incredibly long for no good reason. And then I'm just going to create a couple of these and move them down by, let's see, plus 70. Yep, that's good. Plus 70. And then one more plus 70. And then we'll just rotate these around using our orientation of different parts, and we'll see how it looks. I think I'm going to reduce my quality here because this preview is starting to go kind of slow. There's our cactus, just with randomized little bits coming out of it. We don't really need anything specific, and since its origin around the middle, I'll just scale these down just a tip so that they aren't incredibly thick or incredibly big. Yep, there we go. And once again, let's cast shadows. So there's our shadow emitting from the cactus. And you can see its little lit up and dark side right there. So let's once again add a null to control the cactus's position since it's a construct of multiple objects. We will need to pick with it to null 7, and like I said earlier, organization, let's put that there and put it underneath our cameras. I prefer to have my camera and lights at the top just so that they're kind of the head of the situation, then you can just easily access them. So set my null layer as 3D, and I'll just get some cactus in random places. And since we're going to be working with multiple null stacks, I'm actually going to name this cactus just for organization. And there's our cactuses. Why don't we increase and decrease some of the sizes of these? Since they're anchor points at the bottom, it doesn't really matter if they change a bit. There we go, some are bigger, some are smaller. I think that looks pretty good. Now this is looking decent, but I don't think it's looking sandy enough, so let's add some fractal noise to our base. So I'm just gonna scale that down a little bit, and I'll use colorize here and see just how some of the color we can get using it. So there's a bit more on the orange side, it was a bit more saturated, slightly darkened. And I'll just set the contrast to 0 for comparison's sake. Yep, there's our nice golden sand once again. Brighten it up just a teensy bit. Yep, that's our golden sand. Right, now we can increase the contrast once again. And we'll use our dark parts as the darkening spots. And let's see how that looks in full quality. Little bit weak. How about we change that to more of a smaller scale? There we go, that's a bit more sandy. How about increasing a bit of the complexity? And we could even change our fractal noise type just to see what kind of different results things would show. So rocky might produce something nice. There, I quite like that. I think that's pretty good. Now, I'd like to change these, but I'd have to use compositions like I said if we're going to texture them, so if you wanted to do that, use masked images or use images that you've photoshopped into triangles just so you can really detail those pyramids. But I think this looks decent. How about if we animate it now? So we're going to have to go straight back to quarter quality for this one. So yeah, there is some exposed space here, but it's okay because since we are going to be once again using a scale-in method, honestly, if there's any way you can get away with object being a little weird like this, it's just using a scale-in transition at the start. But don't do things like that. We're just going to use that for the sake of easiness here. I'd suggest just adding another pyramid over there. So let's make our scale in by about 70. And I'll just reduce my rotation just a tad. 0, and I think I'll just increase the scale of it so it's a bit more zoomed out. Yep, that'll do. So this is just our camera movement, and now I'll just ease it very quickly. And there it is. So I kind of liked the shifting sands idea earlier, so let's incorporate that. Evolution, and just move that along around 5 seconds, I'd say. There we go, we can see the sand gradually just shifting away. I think that's cool. Let's animate these cacti. So these are our cactus controllers, and for now I'll just set some very basic common keyframes between them. And they'll go straight into the ground. I'm actually going to look out for our smallest one. So let me just set that keyframe there. And our purple one, which is this one, it can just be slightly moved down. Our orange one can be moved down just till it gets in the sand. This is going to be useful so that there isn't like much offset, because then we can manually set offset if that's what we want. Yellow cactus, put that a bit down as well. And then finally our green cactus can just be slightly shimmied down. And then our start keyframes can be put back to normal, and easy as that. We've animated all of our cactus just with a couple of keyframes. And you could have them in sync like this, but I think we're going to switch it up a bit and make some animations last longer, a bit shorter, maybe make this one slightly longer, maybe this one slightly longer but on a delay. And then we get these offset cactus. Very nice. And let's add just a sky in the background so that we can really make it true. So this will just be a 2D sky layer, and I will just use a very slight gradient of a nice sky blue. So I think a decent pot to start that would be here, and I'll use a decently saturated color because, you know, it's the sky, it's going to be quite bright, especially in the desert. And I think I'm going to need a little bit more light just to make that look more realistic. There. That's looking quite good. And then I'll just mess with the light a tad bit. See, what's a good place to make our sun come from? Oh, that's good. That's pretty good for this scene. Yeah, we'll use that. And then I'll set it a bit further out. And And then I'll just increase the cone angle a little. Yep, that's nice. And then looking at it in full quality, that is our desert. Actually, I've got an idea. Let's add some very basic but rocky desert rocks. So we're going to use, once again, a shape layer. And I'm just going to draw kind of almost a pebble sort of thing. So I'll make it maybe warp a little. And then we'll just make this bottom bit a bit wider so that it actually blends into the ground. Let's create a rocky look using wiggle paths. So when we add that, you can kind of see the path wiggling around. And let's increase the size of those wiggles just a tad bit. Some detail. There we go, now it's looking a bit more malformed. We'll get 12, and since we're just trying to make this look a little more rocky, it doesn't need to be incredible or anything, it just needs to do the job. So just very subtle. We'll turn off wiggles per second because we don't want the rock to be wiggling. I can't say I've seen much rocks wiggle, to be honest, but yeah. I'll make this more of a grey, and I think I'm also going to make it a bit more specular and reflective like a normal rock would be. So, as our rock, let's put it in the scene. And let's open up our geometry options along with our material options just so we can change those. Extrusion depth. And let's use a bevel so that the rock has got something going for it. I'm going to use 250 here, and then our anchor point can be 250/2, so that it's in the middle. And I'll just scale it down a little bit. So yeah, solution is imperfect. You could mess with this though and maybe just create some rotated circles or whatever. But I think this works for now. We'll rotate it a little bit so that it looks more uneven than it actually is and kind of stuck inside the ground. And in our material options, which, whoops, I closed. Let's once again cast shadows, like so. And now, let's add some slight reflection. Really nothing crazy, doesn't need to be insanely reflective. Just as long as you can kind of see stuff in it. There we go. Say 21 would be a good number. And then the specular intensity should probably be much higher, just so that those significant parts of the rock really do shine. And then I'll just reduce the exclusivity of said shine and darken the rock a little bit because it should not be that bright. There it is. And then I'll just kind of once again scatter this around the scene, but it's only one object so we don't need to use null layers this time, making it incredibly easy. And there's just a couple of rocks. They're really not crazy. I'd suggest making varied rocks, but it's enough. Then we can preview it with our lights. And that is a very basic desert scene. So yeah, that's our first quote-unquote complex scene using pretty much all of the things we've learnt. We could even bend this composition a little bit because it's a solid so that it can be bent. Nope, I'm bending it the wrong way. And we'll just use, I don't know, -30 with 20 segments. And then I'll just make that go up a bit. Oh, that's a bit too much curvature, that's for sure. Curvature. I'll set that to about half of the curvature that we have now. And then we'll move it down. Okay, yeah, curvature doesn't seem to be doing so great as an option, but that will do. Yeah, there we go. It's curved. And then rotates around the scene. Like such. And there it is. In all of its animated glory. Not many animations or anything, but it's something. So yeah, that's that. And I guess, once again, more homework for you. Experiment with this pretty much anything that can apply as a shape or a vector can be extruded. So even if you put your logo through into After Effects, you could set it as a shape layer by right clicking, and then there will be an option like create shapes from vector layer, and then you could just extrude that. So that could be all kinds of shapes really, and honestly anything that you can think of probably can be extruded as long as it's a vector shape, such as a circle, triangle, vector object, and then beveled. So go work with this, go mess around with what you want. This is probably all you'll need, about reflective things. Now it's all about messing around. But yeah, that is these tutorials for the main After Effects stuff. Next time we're going to be looking at plugins instead, so that would involve things like Trapcode Mir in 3D, Trapcode Form, and pretty much just that kind of thing. So yeah, see you next time when we do that. See ya.